Go. So today I'm going to discuss freedom of slaves in the 1600s, around 1500s, 1600s. When explorers were going to the Americas. So my discussion today is going to be about whether slaves in those days were freer than slaves in the later on, basically. So in the beginning, it was actually kind of good in some ways, because slaves could actually be a slave for a few years and then they could start working for a little bit of money. They have to pay way more money if they want land, if they want anything else than Caucasian people, but they could work and then they could get a living for themselves. So that was in the very early days. Also what happened in the early days is it used to be you would your identity or where you're from would be based off your father. So what happened was a lot of these Caucasian men married these African American women and had children with them. So there were tons of people, and back then it was said if you were a Christian you weren't supposed to enslave people. It was wrong. It was morally wrong to enslave Christian people. So if a child had a white father and an African American mother, they could actually have a lawsuit against the government. And a lot of these times what happened, people actually won their lawsuits. So in the 1600s, thousands of people were bringing these lawsuits, and these people were becoming free. These children, because they had white fathers. Well, the government realized this, and they realized they had to change something because they needed laborers, to work for crops and all these other things. So the government changed the law. It said it's based after your mother. So all these people had African American mothers, so all of a sudden all these people were enslaved for life. So in the very earlier years it was better. I would say they did have more freedom than later on years. But as it got on, governments kind of realized what was happening, and people realized, and not only that, but there's more and more slavery started coming up in the Atlantic Islands. So more and more slaves that were in the Americas that were having some sort of a decent lifestyle. Like obviously it wasn't as good as people who weren't slaves, but all of a sudden they were shipping thousands of people to these Atlantic Islands to work for crops like sugar, for example. So I would say in the earlier years they had more freedom, but once people started realizing it, they started getting worse and worse, and people just assumed people were enslaved for life. So yeah. All right.